Joining us right now to talk more about this and everything else, New York Times foreign affairs columnist Tom Friedman. His latest column, Has Trump Decided We Follow Sweden and Just Not Told Us? Tom, it's great to see you this morning. We've been spending a lot of time here talking about schools because they're so critical to the entire economic ecosphere insofar as if kids are staying home, it's hard for parents to go back to work. What's your take on all this?
Well, Andrew, since the beginning of this crisis, I believe that our goal has to be what Dr. David Katz calls total harm minimization. How do we balance saving lives and livelihoods in a sustainable way? And so, as Dr. Gottlieb said, exploring how to get kids back into school is vital to do that. To me, it's all a question of how you frame these things. We have an excellent op-ed piece in our paper this morning from a doctor at Johns Hopkins, and I would endorse every proposal he made. I think it should be a national rule that everyone has to wear a mask inside, outside, any kind of public area. Second, we should actually be encouraging people to do as much business outside as possible. There are all these studies coming out that if you have to work in a closed space, and by the way, that applies to a restaurant or a factory, the speed and ease with which this coronavirus can be spread is really stunning. Third, we should, I think, be actually surrounding every nursing home in this country with units of the National Guard and public health together to make sure we are protecting the most vulnerable. Fourth, we should be practicing social distancing everywhere. And lastly, we should be taking over hotels. The government should be taking over empty hotels and enabling people who live in maybe a family where one of the parents has to be at home for whatever reasons of illness, the other one's working outside, the kids are in and out. That elderly parent, especially if he or she has obesity issues or pulmonary issues, is extremely vulnerable. I think if we took all five of those things and put them out there, there's a chance that we can open in a way that does total harm minimization.
Right. Tom, I completely agree with you in most parts of the country. One of the more complicated issues is in cities like New York City, Chicago, other cities that require public transport or transportation, meaningful public transport to get to schools, for example. And so the question I'd ask is sort of how you think about those kind of locations and also how you think parents should think about these risks. Because even though it seems like children have very little risk, we are hearing of certain anecdotal stories of certain children having severe complications and real problems. And so even if the risk is tiny, if it's your child, it's a problem. And so there's this asymmetric relationship there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do need to look at the numerator denominator issue here and what real fraction of children are affected by these extreme symptoms. This is I think the hardest thing for us to appreciate, Andrew, is up against Mother Nature. And it's not fair, and it's not going to be equal. There are some parts of the country, as Dr. Gottlieb said, they may not be able to open schools. We need to find other alternatives for them. We need to find ways to economically sustain people and maybe sustain them while their kids are at home for a much longer period in different parts of the country. None of this is fair. But, where I begin all my analysis, Andrew, is not with economists, not with political scientists. It's not even with epidemiologists. It's with evolutionary biologists. Because if you don't start there, you don't really appreciate what you're up against. Okay, viruses, floods, droughts, pandemics, these are all the fastballs Mother Nature throws at us to sort out the fittest, okay? That's what she does. And she does not reward the smartest. She does not reward the strongest. Right. She only rewards the most adaptive. And in our case, the only way you can adapt to this virus, you got to take three states of mind. One is you have to be incredibly humble. If you're not humble, she will hurt you. Number two, you have to be incredibly coordinated because she evolved these viruses to find your weakness. And lastly, you have to be entirely about chemistry, biology, and physics. If you're not, if you're about politics, ideology, or something else, she will hurt you.
Well, Tom, let me ask you, though, about the politics of this, because the Democrats now have a $3 trillion plan on the table, much of which is being derided by the other side. There's big questions about how much testing is really going to get into service and into place over the summer. There's still obviously issues about access to PPE and the like. How would you recommend from a policy perspective, and if you can do it, and how do you do that without and take the politics out of it?
Well, it's really hard. But what worries me right now, Andrew, is that the administration talks like we're kind of being like China. It acts like it really wants to go for herd immunity like Sweden. It prepares for neither, and it boasts that it's superior to both. You've got to take this seriously. And one of the things I've become in favor of, I really think we need to take seriously these proposals for some kind of minimum income for people. We could be in this for a long time. And I think basically I would rather err, Andrew, on the side of pushing too much money out to keep people upright, all right, than holding money back and making a depression a Great Depression.
Hey, Tom, on that point, we spoke with Senator Portman yesterday from Ohio, and he was talking about his plan, which is he thinks that in order to make sure you still have people going back to work, but also to reward the people on the front lines, that maybe what we should be doing is if you do go back to work, maybe in one of these low-income jobs, one of these minimum wage jobs, you should continue to get to keep some of the pay that you would be getting on unemployment at home. Instead of $600 a week, he's saying maybe $450 a week, which would be a pretty big number if you add that to the income that you're getting on top of it. It's an interesting plan and perhaps one that could get some support from both sides of the aisle. What do you think about that?
Becky, I love that idea. And I love every idea like that. I am terrified when you see those pictures that we've seen over the last few weeks of miles and miles of cars. Six wide, lined up to get a box of food. There is real pain down there. And this could turn into real social unrest if we, go for a couple more months like this. And there's every possibility we could. So I'm for erring on the side of just pushing the money out. We will sort it out later.